Are you in the market for a new sidearm? Maybe you're tired of all the endless 1911s and Glocks out there. Have you thought about getting yourself a revolver, but are a little bit wary of all the cumbersome loading of the shells and the ability to drop them all over the floor, which, let's face it, happens all too often? Well, maybe I have an alternative for you. Because today we are looking at the Elite Force H8R, or H8R. What we have here is actually the Generation 2 H8R, for all intents and purposes, almost identical to the Generation 1, just that this one comes with the addition of this little port here, which grants us access to our adjustable hop-up, something the Generation 1 never benefited from. So, aside from its good looks, what makes this pistol such a great option for you, either as an additional sidearm or, as I'm going to recommend to you guys today, as a starter sidearm? Yes, if you're new to the game, this would be my sidearm of choice for you. And why is that? Well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So, with the H8R, what you have is an exceptionally good and very robustly made sidearm. Obviously, it doesn't look like your standard revolver. We don't have the spinning drum or anything like that. They actually advertise this as a super magnum, as you'll see here. But to all intents and purposes, I was drawn to this sidearm because, well, it kind of looks a bit space age. For me, this was very akin to something you would see in Destiny, Destiny 2, that kind of thing, as a hand cannon. And to all intents and purposes, that was precisely why I bought the H8R in the first place. My idea was going to be to sand it down, spray it up, and have a bit of a homage to Destiny 2's Ace of Spades. A plan I'm still fully committed to, albeit I never seem to actually have the time to get around to doing at the minute, but it's something I desperately want to achieve at some point. Like I say, super magnum in looks, a bit of a hand cannon, but what makes this so perfect for a beginner is the very simplistic nature of this construction. So what we have here is essentially 3 pieces of polymer. You'll see that there is a seam that runs the entire body of the hand cannon. We're going to refer to it as a hand cannon, not a sidearm now, just to play to my ego. So yeah, there's a split that runs all the way down the hand cannon. That is the 2 pieces of polymer. The third piece of polymer is actually, if I rotate it to the right side, is actually this here. You can see I can split the pistol grip open, and that gives us access. That's the third piece of polymer. That gives us access to our CO2 bulb. Yes, this is a CO2 sidearm, which makes it extremely versatile, extremely consistent. You're not going to get any drop-off in performance that you might register with your standard 1911 or a Glock or anything of that nature that's using green gas. This will work every time you pull the trigger in the same manner, regardless of the weather conditions or temperature. Like I say, 3 pieces of polymer. All the internals are metal. You could see that the cradle for the CO2 bulb was metal and everything as well. I won't open that again. Essentially, what you have here is a very weighty item. It feels very, very well made. It feels almost tank-like in your hands. It's an absolute unit. And the polymer, because there's nothing that moves, unlike a 1911, unlike a Glock, unlike a standard revolver where the drum here would spin, and obviously side load and everything to put your shells in. Nothing like that actually happens with this. And as such, you ain't going to break this thing. As sidearms go, it's pretty much as plug and play as you could hope for. There's pretty much zero maintenance on this thing. And as a beginner sidearm, you couldn't ask for more. My concern with recommending certain sidearms to beginners, like the AAP, well, even like some 1911s and stuff like that, if you're not familiar with servicing and maintaining your sidearm and that kind of thing, certainly the AAP has some built-in flaws anyway, as we've already discussed in that video. I worry that there's almost too much to go wrong, and as a beginner player, you could come away with a real bad taste in your mouth if your sidearm lets you down on the first day or even the first couple of game days. That's not going to be the case with the H8R. This thing is just going to keep ticking away. You can drop it in the mud, you can drop it in the dirt, you can drop it in the water if you like. It will still keep ticking, and really, yeah, it's as robust as they come. You'll see in the video that I'm actually utilising it alongside the universal holster for the USWA-1. Now, a lot of people's concerns with that holster is that it leaves your sidearm exposed, and when you're crawling through scrub and brush and stuff like that, either it might pop out. I've proven it doesn't in another video, but there's always that danger that, you know, will it get damaged if you're scuffing it along walls and stuff like that? Well, of course it will. You have to be there has to be a certain amount of duty of care to your sidearm in that respect, but it allows for a much quicker draw. And with the H8R, it's so robustly made, and like I say, there's no moving parts on it. The polymer used here is extremely dense. You're not going to damage the pistol by having it exposed on your hip or your drop leg or anything like that. It's just going to keep going, and with reference to the speed that you can draw, it's greatly increased, which if you're playing a bit of the cowboy role and stuff like that, draw time is important. It also allows you to try and do all the spinny cowboy shit and all the rest of it as well. I can't say I'm particularly good at it, but when you do get it right, you feel like an absolute legend when you do it. But more often than not, I drop mine on the floor, but just like I say, keeps on working. So how does it actually work? If there's no moving parts on this, what have we got here? And there's no dummy shells. Well, you'll see here that we have what I would like to refer to as a spindle release. So we pull this forward, lock it into position up there, and it draws a little spindle that we'll see in a moment back into the tumbler and allows you to release this disc. Now this disc is essentially your cartridge. You get 3 of these in the box with the H8R. They take 10 rounds each. Doesn't sound like a lot, especially not in comparison to a 1911 or a Glock, but it really depends on how you intend to use this thing. My argument with sidearms quite often is that they are there as a secondary weapon, they're as a backup weapon, whether it's due to engagement distances that you have to utilise them, or whether your primary weapon runs out of ammunition, stuff like that. To have 30 rounds as a sidearm almost gives it the potential to be a primary, and in a lot of instances in CQB you could utilise it as a primary. My argument would be 10 shots is still enough, but for some people it won't be. But anyway, I digress, as I always do. You get 10 shots per cartridge. You get 3 cartridges in the box with the gun. These are readily available on Amazon and eBay as well as other retailers, obviously. And they actually they sell in packs of 2 for as little as sort of £6 to £8, depending on where you shop. Now, back to the spindle I was talking about a minute ago. Like I say, if we release the spindle, you'll see it crack back through, and that just holds the cartridge, if you like, in place and allows it to spin and rotate. On the back of the cartridge we have a little gear set, for want of a better term. A little gear set you can see with little teeth on it, and those are actuated, I'll pull the spindle out of the way again, those are actuated by your trigger. So you'll see as I pull the trigger, just down here, just above my fingertip there, you'll see a little tooth come out. Now if I take it off of safety, obviously, you'll see the tooth protrude, and that's what's turning the gear. Now the downside to this, in my view, because I'm not a skilled gunsman, But I would have liked the tooth to have been, you'll see if I actuate the trigger, it stays up and doesn't spin anymore. Now I would have liked it to have been connected to the hammer, but that's purely to help me as an amateur. I would have liked it to have been connected to the hammer, because then what we might have been able to do is hold the trigger down, and like they do in a couple of westerns and stuff like that, I might have been able to fan the trigger to fire the gun off rapidly. Again, going back to Destiny 2, that would be, oh god, I've forgotten the gun now, but you can fan it from the hip, and it's particularly cool. Certainly in westerns you see it and that kind of thing. But it's not possible with this unless you can almost just allow the trigger to reset just enough. But for it to reset and turn, you're still pulling the trigger. You don't gain any of the benefit of holding the trigger down and fanning it. Someone more skilled than me might be able to make it work. I can't, which is not unusual. But yeah, so that is fundamentally as complicated as this gun gets. You have a spindle that goes through, it spins the disc connected to a mechanism on the trigger, and you pull the trigger. You can operate it normally, just consistently pull the trigger. Like I say, if there is no, obviously there's no BBs in it, but for safety reasons we will remove the cartridge. But yeah, you pull the trigger, it spins the disc, loads the next BB in, and the hammer comes forward to strike and obviously release the gas and the BB. That is it. You have essentially two moving parts, the trigger and the hammer. They're interconnected. That's as complicated as it gets. Like I say, no servicing required. We don't have a slide and a load of springs in play or anything like that. It's as plug and play as you can get. There's nothing to go wrong with it. It doesn't go wrong. It's hugely consistent. And what more could you want? Honestly. So what do we get? When we say it's hugely consistent, what do we get out of it? Well, I would say CO2 bulbs last seemingly forever. I would say of these 10-shot discs, one CO2 bulb is probably enough to go through close to 10 discs, in all honesty. You will begin to lose power right at the end of that, probably around about shot 80 or something like that. But other than that, very, very good. On the topic of the CO2 bulbs, I need to talk about the only thing that lets this pistol down, or well, pistol hand cannon down. And that is something that they've attempted to build in, a feature that they've attempted to build in. They wanted it to be a toolless system, if you like. So they included this into the pistol grip. Now this would replace your Allen key, if you like, and allow you to remove your CO2 bulb seamlessly without the need of an additional tool. The problem with this is this is the least robust bit of the pistol. You can see it's only held in place and caged up with very thin bits of polymer there. And in trying to torque it shut, it inevitably breaks. As you can see, mine has done. So yeah, not a great way to do it. Have an additional tool, it will only let you down otherwise. But that is literally the only flaw in the system, a tool that they've attempted to build in for your own creature comfort. But yeah, only really use it in an emergency, because we all know what CO2 bulbs are like. You need to screw them in hard and get them in, and in your aspirations to achieve that, you tend to torque this thing out of its own range, and it snaps and breaks, and that's disappointing. But other than that, yeah, fantastic system. You can see here we have accessory rails on the top, so you could run a Gaudi red dot or something like that. Christ, you know, it's probably long enough that you could just about get away with fitting an EOTech or something. And like I say, the accessory rail at the bottom, you could use a torch. That would look splendid on this thing. But I actually, because I holster it using the ASG's universal service holster, that attaches to the bottom perfectly. Leaves a little bit of an overhang down here that some may not like the look of, but ultimately functions really, really well. Because other than the USWA one holster, you're not going to get a lot of options for this. It's too chunky, it's a bit of an odd shape as far as revolvers go and that kind of thing. Outside of getting something made up like a Kydex or something like that, you might get away with one of those Viper fabric holsters if you cut them a little bit and re-sew them to allow the girth in and that kind of thing. Other than that, you're going to be a little bit limited. But yeah, a great hand cannon, a great starter option for those players who are a little bit unsure about where they're going to go with servicing and stuff like that, and just want something they can consistently use, they can beat around, they don't have to treat with kid gloves. This thing can be, yeah, like I say, thrown in the dirt quite consistently and it will just keep on going. Right guys, sorry, we were going to talk about performance, weren't we? So what do we get in terms of performance? Well, so it actually clocks in at, on average, around about 290 FPS on a 0.2 gram BB. Obviously, you will see as you get to the very end of the bulb and its capabilities, you will see a slight power drop off on that. But certainly if you're using it in CQB areas and stuff like that, it's never going to let you down right to the last shot. It's still going to leave the barrel with about 200 FPS, not a problem. Range-wise, as with anything, with sidearms, hand cannons, revolvers, whatever, a lot of that consistency in the shot is going to come down to you as a user, your ability to steady yourself in your aim and that kind of thing. But that being said, if you are fairly good at that sort of steadying and readying yourself and you know, supporting hand and that kind of thing, it is a very consistent sidearm at, I would say, 25 to 30 meters is about where we want to be using this thing. It will reach out further, but again, you're going to find inconsistencies that are probably more down to you as the user than they are the pistol, but horses for courses, obviously. If you're a crack shot, you're a crack shot at any range, aren't you? Right, that's been my look at the Elite Force H8R. As always, guys, if it's been of any help to you in a future purchase, or just any entertainment, then a like and a subscribe is always welcome, and I'll see you guys in the next one.